federal government is turning their back on disabled kids. Department of Education just went on a firing spree, and guess who they fired? Employees from the Office of Special Education Rehabilitation Services, exact office that makes sure kids with disabilities get the services that they are legally required to get.
The Trump administration and Republicans don't want your disabled child to get an education. How do I know this? They just fired every single member of the Special Education Department at the Department of Education, all in the name of the government shutdown.
You are a parent to a special needs child. I need you to get really fucking mad this morning. Yesterday, the Trump administration thought that it was appropriate to fire the entire special education office in the Department of Education, meaning that all of our kids' advocates, the ones that make sure that the schools have the funding for the services that our children need, they no longer have a job. Think about not just our children, but foster children. There are so many kids out there, vulnerable children, and this administration went on the most vulnerable first. Before we actually lost our health care, they lost their education. A special needs parent on the dark side, I need you to wake the fuck up. Are you gonna choose your child, or are you gonna choose your fearless leader? I mean, which one is it?
Hey, really quick PSA to the moms who have kids in public school who think that the defunding of the special education department doesn't matter. It does matter, because guess where those special ed kids are gonna go? In your kids' class. Guess whose teacher is gonna be completely overwhelmed teaching the special ed kids? Your kid's teacher. And then guess what's going to suffer? Your child's education, okay? If you think that your child's teacher is overwhelmed now, put in the special ed kids that they're not trained and they're not equipped to handle. Your child is not going to be receiving any one-on-one teaching, help, or care. None of this stuff happens in a vacuum. They're fucking over our kids, and not just the ones that have special needs, okay?
Imagine being so pissed off that you were a special needs child that never got your special needs met, that when you become a special needs adult, you decide to go after every special needs child in the United States. Good job.
So the Trump administration is gutting the Department of Education, primarily the people who oversee the implementation of IDEA. And they distribute about $15 billion worth of federal funds to the states. This funding funds things like speech pathologists, occupational therapists, AAC devices, many things that disabled children need. This money is used for. Because money is sent from the federal government to the states, and now there aren't people to manage it. And it's not just the federal level. There are various states gutting programs that affect special needs families at a time when the most vulnerable students are being affected by the funding cuts across the board. What we should be advocating for is for students to get the services that they need, and for families to get the help that they need.
Dumb people just gutted the special education staff at the federal level. And the neurodivergent kids with special needs are going to be the ones who suffer for it. I do occupational therapy for a living, and I spent years working in public school systems providing services. I've seen how fragile the system already is. And what's happening right now is terrifying. The staff who works in the federal offices that run special education are the people who help enforce IDEA, they handle funding, and they make sure schools actually follow the law. So with all those people gone, there's barely anyone left to hold those districts accountable. So when schools cut corners or skip services, ain't nobody enforcing, 'cause ain't nobody there to check. And the kids lose. And don't you fuck around and think that just because you live in a wealthy district, this won't affect you. Think again. I've worked in several districts, and honestly, some of the wealthier districts were the worst at providing appropriate programs for students in special ed. So the funding helps to provide the support. The accountability ensures the support. And for kids who have special needs or maybe just need a 504 plan, consistency and support shouldn't be optional. So when oversight disappears, so do their services. And that's when kids who already struggle to be seen just vanish from the system. And education has always been political, but access to services for children with disabilities should never be up for debate. Parents, y'all need to pay attention. Educators, y'all need to help advocate for these kids and families. Share this video to bring awareness to what's going on right now, because this shit is unacceptable.
What's up everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thanks again for tuning in. Alright folks, we have to talk about this because something alarming is actually happening right now in the country. And if you care about vulnerable kids and keeping basic rights intact, you need to hear this, because the US Department of Education is undergoing what can only be described as a purge. Massive layoffs, dismantling of key offices, and especially decimating of the staff that actually protects children with disabilities. Now, all this is actually happening in the middle of a government shutdown. And if you go ahead and ask the Orange Man's administration, they're gonna actually be pointing fingers at the Dems. But you have to actually stop for a minute and think about it. Is this the America First policy that Maga actually wanted for? If you are a Maga supporter, you have to ask yourself, is this the great America that you wanted? The great America that actually puts people with special needs on the side, cutting funding to such a key department in education of people with special needs and disability. You gotta ask yourself some questions, some uncomfortable questions. Is this the great America that you voted for? Yeah, that is exactly what you voted for. But a lot of you would actually come here and tell us that no, this is not what you voted for, it's not what you wanted, it's not what the Orange Man actually represented. Well, newsflash, nothing that the Orange Man is doing is new. Everything he's doing, he has already done before, and he actually ran a campaign of saying exactly what he was going to do. You guys wanted jobs to come back to American soil, yet the man is actually taking jobs from Americans, all in the name of cutting cost and funding and an excuse of a government shutdown. I want us to look at these videos that I have compiled for you guys. Let's take a look at them and let me know your opinions in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit that like button and leave a comment because it helps with pushing this video to a wider audience. Let's take a look. I'll be back with more commentary after this.
Department of Education just fired nearly everyone in the office that focuses on the nation's children with disabilities. That means if disabled students don't get the education they're legally entitled to, they may never have access to jobs, higher education, or even basic independence. This isn't just a funding cut, it's structural neglect. It's saying support for disabled people is optional. That's a dangerous mindset. That's literally eugenics by omission. Now layer this with cuts to Medicaid. Kids with disabilities rely on both of those systems, so one gives them access to learning, the other to therapies, medical equipment, support services, etc. So if you cut both, what happens? Families spiral into crisis, inequity deepens, some children will lose their chance to thrive, and some will not survive. If you're thinking, well, this doesn't affect me or my kid, think again. When Medicaid is gutted, rural hospitals and local doctors, many of whom rely on those payments, start shutting down. So your access to care might disappear too, even if you don't have Medicaid. This is all connected and we have to act. Republicans made a choice to abandon disabled kids and gut the programs that keep families afloat. There is nothing pro-life about any of these decisions. We must hold our elected officials accountable.
They're firing the very people who protect kids with disabilities. This isn't just negligence, it feels like erasure. The Department of Education recently laid off 1,300 staff members, slashing nearly half of its workforce overnight. I'm Laura, mom to Leah, a child with Dravet syndrome. What's happening right now in the Office of Special Education is more than just political maneuvering. It's a direct attack on kids who cannot afford to lose this safety net. But let me tell you what this really means. Without the federal oversight, states and school districts can deny services, delay IEPs, ignore complaints, and even operate without accountability. This just leaves more kids falling through the cracks. When the people charged with enforcing IDEA, which is the law that guarantees free and appropriate education for our disabled kiddos, are laid off, who's left to fight for us? Who ensures the districts follow the rules? Who investigates discrimination? This feels eerily close to eugenics, where those who are deemed different are pushed aside, marginalized, and erased. When a government says that it won't invest in the very staff charged with safeguarding our disabled children, that's not neutral. It sends a message that some lives matter less. I refuse to be quiet while they dismantle the rights that they promised to protect.
The Trump administration and Republicans don't want your disabled child to get an education. How do I know this? They just fired every single member of the special education department at the Department of Education, all in the name of the government shutdown. But I posted about this months ago when comments were made by a Fox News host saying that Yeah, they don't want these kids in school. He doesn't want those kids around his kids. And with all of the dog whistling by RFK Jr. about children with autism, this was only a matter of time. Now, these employees that were fired from this specific department oversaw compliance with federal law, making sure that, hey, you know what? Schools and districts were complying with the federal law that requires every single child to have access to equitable and appropriate public education. They also oversee the funding that is given to states so they can disperse that to make sure that, aides are available in the classroom, occupational therapists are made available, speech and language pathologists, assistive learning technology like tablets or amplified hearing devices for the hearing impaired. All of that's gone. All of those people who were there making sure your child was able to get an education, they are gone. And this is all playing into the larger plan to get children with disabilities out of the general public school population like they said they would. I posted about this months ago. I do not take any pride in being right about this, but you need to pay attention and you need to know about it.
Last night, the Department of Education laid off almost every single staff member at the Office of Special Education. These staffers are the people that are responsible for distributing the funding for the IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, okay? I am sick of getting on this app and saying I told you so, but I have been screaming I told you so since November. I have been telling people I am scared for my disabled child, okay? And I'm telling you guys all that you should be scared for you or your disabled loved ones, okay? This country is practicing eugenics. This will immediately affect children in public education in the United States. This will immediately affect some of the most vulnerable Americans from the party that claims to care about children. They are cutting staffers whose job is to enforce and distribute funds for IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act. What y'all told me was safe. What y'all have been screaming from the rooftops. Anna, you're exaggerating. Anna, your child's fine. Anna, we don't have to worry. We have to worry. This is insane. Our children are in danger. This government is not looking out for them. I told you so.
Federal government is turning their back on disabled kids. Department of Education just went on a firing spree, and guess who they fired? Employees from the Office of Special Education and Rehabilitation Services. Exact office that makes sure kids with disabilities get the services that they are legally required to get. These are not random jobs. These are the people that make sure schools follow federal law, that kids get their IEPs, that parents can call this office when they are being ignored and their kids are not getting access to a free education. Without them, there is no one left to hold schools accountable. I need people to understand this. No one will be checking if funds are going to be used properly. No one is going to be checking if kids are getting the proper speech, the proper occupational therapy, the proper physical therapy that they need in schools. The learning support that they promise, the learning support that my own son needs. I am honestly so goddamn pissed. This is not budget trimming. This is abandonment. They are cutting the lifelines of families that already have to fight every single day. So if you care about protecting children, if you've ever said that you're pro-life, this is the shit you should be standing up for. Because right now, the federal government is turning their back on disabled kids. And if you don't speak up, no one will.
Under this Trump government shutdown, because I'm going to call it what it is, now the U.S. Department of Education has laid off nearly all of its staff. Now, the exact number of layoffs have not been disclosed, but to have nearly all of the staff decimated, it doesn't sound good. Because who is it going to affect? Children with special needs and who are disabled. So now states will not receive the funding it needs to help with kids who are special needs. And may I add, that's $15 billion in funding that will be disrupted. Are we great yet? Because I'm afraid we're not. And the amount of layoffs that's happening under Trump's administration, how can one say that Trump is winning? How can anyone say that? because he's not. When you're constantly affecting people's livelihood, that's not winning. And how could anyone fix their mouths to say that, oh, all these layoffs and everything he's doing is winning? It's not winning. It's hurting the American.
All right, folks, there you have it. Actually, this is sad, man. It's sad, especially for those people with special needs kids with disabilities. Now, you have to ask yourself, man, when these people were actually chanting to the top of their voices that they wanted to make America great again, is this the great America that they wanted? When they were chanting for America First policies, I thought these are the people in need actually should be put first in a community. And that's why you find that even when firefighters show up at any place to save anybody, it's always women and kids that get the first priority. Now, people with disability have to be given the first priority. I understand you trying to fire federal employees to actually get that cost from the government down, but really? Special needs department of education? It doesn't make sense. We have to understand this and we have to make it clear, because this isn't just some budget cuts or some bureaucratic shuffle. The U.S. Department of Education, especially the Office of Special Education Programs and the Office of Civil Rights, has been hit with massive layoffs following the 2025 government shutdowns. Now, if you go ahead and ask any Republican, any Maga supporters, or even the Orange Man administration, they're going to point a finger at the Dems. Actually, the government is shut down because of the Dems' fault. But look at what the Dems are fighting for. They're fighting for healthcare for everybody, to actually lose that Affordable Care Act, for you not to lose the Obamacare, for you not to lose something that actually protects you when you are not able to pay for your own healthcare. Now, the biggest argument from the Repubs is that the Dems want to give healthcare to illegal immigrants, but it isn't so, because there is a minute number of actually immigrants that fall under healthcare, for instance, and that would be maybe refugees who are documented. Refugees are documented immigrants. They're not illegal immigrants. Now, we have to understand that these are the offices that make sure schools follow federal disability laws, like the Individual with Disabilities and Education Act, the IDEA, and the Section 504 of Rehabilitation Act. These staff members ensure that schools actually deliver these services promised to kids with disabilities, things like speech therapy, physical therapy, and individualized learning plans. Without these people in this department, there is no way that these schools are gonna follow the law. There is no way, because if you go ahead and fire these people, there's no one left to monitor compliance, enforce rights, and investigate discrimination complaints. So these people weren't doing just nothing. They were not wasting government funds. They were actually helping real people with disability. You might not have a kid with disability, but this could happen to you, could happen to one of your family members, one of your friends, or even if you don't have any close relative or friends with disability. You also have to understand that it's a country. You ought to have sympathy and empathy on people who cannot help themselves. They need the community. They need the government. This is actually the first priority in any country. These are the people that should be at your alleged America First policy. There is no way you can be saying that, oh, you wanted Americans to be put first. Well, yeah, you got exactly what you voted for. You got your man. But why would people, kids with disability, not be considered as a first priority, as somebody who actually needs help? There is no wastage of government funding in that. Now, a lot of you might argue that no, it's not even the kids who are being affected, it's just the people in the Department of Special Needs who are being cut because their work is allegedly not needed for the people or the kids with special needs to be given care. Now, you have to ask yourself, do you think these schools are going to comply with the laws if there is nobody to actually be investigating the complaints, if there is no office that mother, that parent with special needs kids that can go report that to? Well, the schools are gonna get away with it. They're going to show neglect to especially these kids because these kids demand a lot of attention, and that attention, if there is nobody holding you to account so that you actually give the same attention to these kids, even extra attention to these kids than you giving the normal kids, you ain't gonna do it. Human beings are human beings. They might see themselves as tired, or they don't want to go the extra mile. They don't want to be understanding. That's exactly what's at stake. But I want you to let me know in the comments what you think about today's episode. Like the video, it really helps with the algorithm when you hit that like button, and leave a comment. The video gets pushed to a wider audience. So subscribe to the channel also if you're new. Thank you very much for those of you who are subscribed and always return to watch my videos and support this channel. Thank you for watching. See you on the next episode.